So, down to the sitting. Many of you are quite familiar with Peter, Prof. Arlett, and his significant achievements. He was a professor in JCU Electrical Engineering and was later a Pro Vice Chancellor of Research. Prof was an inspiration to many electrical engineers in this part of the world. People who work in the power industry will acknowledge that the power distribution and relatively uninterrupted power we enjoy today, and also take for granted, will not be the same without Prof's contributions. To acknowledge his contribution, we, the Northern Australian section of IEEE, last year started this annual lecture in the area of power and energy, which for the second year again is being held in conjunction with the CN Partner Award. So this year we're very honoured to have May Newey as a speaker for this lecture. May is a Sydney-based director of GHD, and GHD is a global professional services company employing about 8,500 people over about 200 locations worldwide. May is also an electrical engineer with a 25-year background in engineering, and she's kindly donated her time to come up and speak with us this evening and share her thoughts. So if you can please welcome May.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, Vice Chancellor, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It is a real honour to be delivering the Professor Arlett Lecture for 2014, especially as an electrical engineer myself, with the huge legacy that Professor Arlett has left behind for the electrical engineering community here in Townsville and further afield. We also have the privilege, and I'm very personally moved, to have the Arlett family, Anne, Jan, Julie, and the extended family here with us tonight. And Anne and family, I hope that I have chosen a thought-provoking topic that Professor Arlett would have approved. And I also acknowledge and respect the elders past and present. In keeping with the theme of this lecture series about engineering and society, I would like to talk about next generation electrical engineering, or for that matter, next generation engineering full stop. So my topic, and although it was printed in the flyer as electrical engineering in the cyber world, I'd like to make it general so that my other colleagues don't pay me out tomorrow when I go back into the GHD office in town. So we saw the presentations from the 4 talented students and future leaders of Australia, and we saw the academic discourse that they put forward to us. So I thought I'll just also join them and be a bit mathematical about translating my topic for tonight into some sort of a mathematical expression. Sorry about the poor attempt. How does engineering play out in the cyber world of today? The fundamental laws of physics and principles do not change, but technological advances and the resultant societal changes and expectations have significant implications on the way engineers of today will need to think and work. And in presenting my views on next generation engineering, I hope I can, at the same time, paint a picture of the very exciting world that the students graduating from this university will be embarking upon. A world that you are already very much in and aware of, that is interconnected over the internet, and a world that is filled with mobile devices and other things, as coined in the term, the Internet of Things. So the Internet of Things is the conceptual term to refer to the vast ecosystem of everyday objects which can be interconnected and which can communicate in an intelligent fashion within an internet infrastructure. Words like pervasive automation and ubiquitous computing are commonly used to describe this state of play. Pervasiveness and ubiquity, words that describe our everyday life and the lives of engineers. For electrical engineers, you only have to do a Google of the IEEE website and the topics jump right out at you. Smart grids, data analytics, big data. In this room today, We all have our smartphones, our iPads, smartwatches, and the list goes on. And just to underscore how pervasive the Internet of Things is, I recently came back from an Internet of Things forum overseas, and I stayed in a hotel room where the forum was held. The fridge in my hotel room was a smart fridge in which items taken from the minibar are tracked and linked to your hotel bill. So no more pilferage. I did take a bottle of water from that fridge, and I checked out of the hotel not speaking to one human receptionist. I got back to Australia. There was a deadline change 2 days later, so I left the US on a Friday. I got back to Australia on the Sunday, and my credit card statement that I checked online already had my hotel bill, including the cost of the bottle of water that I took out of the fridge 3 nights prior. So with this pervasiveness, what then are the role of engineers in the Internet of Things? How do engineers deal with the fast-evolving, fast-paced developments? Is the stuff of science fiction now a reality? Are machines replacing us? The answer to the last 2 questions is yes and no, for now. Yes, the stuff of science fiction is becoming a reality, but no, the machines are not replacing us, except in Tom Cruise movies. Not yet anyway. But never before are engineers in a better place to make a mark and to cement their place in society. The American author Pearl Bach once said, if you want to understand today, you have to search yesterday. So before I explain further and to highlight the vision of next generation engineering that I want to paint for you this evening, and the opportunities that are available to engineers for the future, let me take you on a little history tour and a quick snapshot of my own experiences dealing with technology. But first, let me go back to the late 1800s and around the turn of the 20th century, and Nikola Tesla. And electrical engineers will know who Tesla is. Tesla is best known for his role in the development of the modern alternating current electrical supply system, but he also had the reputation of being a mad scientist and continues to generate controversy and debate and about the ideas he came up with, the Tesla world system. But Tesla was really a futurist. So consider the so-called world system that he came up with. He came up with a series of benefits that would arise out of interconnecting all the world's telegraph offices. And as I read these benefits that Tesla proposed way back around 1900, take a moment to contemplate what I'm describing. And I quote from a book on Tesla by Robert Lomas. Provide a secret and secure government message service. Of course, that was the days before WikiLeaks. Allow any telephone user to speak to any other. Provide a news transmission service for the world's newspapers. Offer private citizens the opportunity to exchange private messages rapidly and safely. Link all stock markets. Transmit music anywhere. Offer a worldwide automatic system for setting clocks with astronomical precision. Allow for the transmission of typed messages or handwritten script or checks. Provide a navigation system that could tell any ship's navigator exactly where the ship was at any time. Offer a means of printing out messages to any location on land or at sea. Allow for the reproduction by wireless of photographs or drawings. And finally, make possible the transmission of electric power to any site in the world. So what were you thinking as I went through that list of Tesla's world system? I think I would be right in saying that you will be ticking off each item as I read out that list, except for the last perhaps, the transmission of electric power to any site in the world, for which Tesla was and continues to be ridiculed. But wait, sitting on my desk at home and shown here on the slide is this wonderful invention that allows me to charge my Samsung phone wirelessly. And I keep this wonderful device permanently plugged into the phone, into the power point, have it left on my desk, have a routine that I place the phone as I sit at my desk, pick it up when I have to leave my desk, no dangling electric cords to deal with. And by the way, that's a picture of my son's smartwatch that we gave him for his 21st. And if you look closely, that's actually a text message to him. The point I wish to make in taking you through this tiny segment of the history of electrical engineering is that engineers in a cyber world need to think and work unfettered by what seems impossible within the current construct, beliefs and capabilities of our current thinking. My point is probably best summarized in a speech in honor of Tesla, described in the book I mentioned previously. It is easy, I think, for engineers and scientists to take for granted things that have been done in years past. When we sit under an apple tree and see the apples fall, it is an obvious phenomenon of nature. We can understand the laws of gravitation, but to Sir Isaac Newton, many years ago, this phenomenon, which to us today is so simple, helped him to an act of creative imagination of the most extraordinary kind. The second part of my little history tour is about my own experience. During one of the presentations of new communications network technologies at the forum I mentioned previously, the speaker related a story about him getting lost in a big city in the days before GPSs, and how he stopped to ask an old man for directions, who told him, "Son, you can't get there from here." And because it was in America, it's more like, "Son, you can't get there from here." The speaker went on to liken this experience to his early days as a production engineer with his IT department, where invariably it was always about, "Son, you can't do it. Son, you can't get there from here." This anecdote struck a chord with me because I used to get that reaction, "Son, you can't get there from here." Except in my case, before the awareness about gender diversity, it was, "Sweetie, you can't get there from here." And in the mid-1990s, I was asked to design the building management system for an aged care facility catering to people suffering from dementia. The operators of the facility asked for an automatic monitoring system that could track the patients who, typically of the dementia-affected people, would go wandering and lose themselves. If you think the World Wide Web was only accessible in 1993, and that in 1990, Franklin's, the supermarket chain, became the first to introduce scanning in all of its 191 stores in Australia, what do you think the choices that were available to me in my design? Choices that was simply around off-the-shelf and available technologies, not technologies that were still in beta testing mode or stages or specially bespoke. Pressure pads were obvious. Motion detectors, CCTV surveillance, they were all the choices I had at my disposal. But you can guess the logical problems I would have with discriminating between patients and others. So it was really a case of, "Sweetie, you can't get there from here." Fast forward to today, and you have RFID video analytics that can tell you not only that a patient has gone wandering into the hospital grounds and outside onto the main road, but his or her name, their next of kin details, and their medical history. The opportunities that are presented to you today are through fast evolving and advanced technologies are limitless but you need to understand what role you can play and not let these technologies drive you. Engineering in a cyber world parallels Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which describes how humans are motivated. Abraham Maslow was a psychologist who in 1943 proposed the theory that the way humans are motivated can be described as a pyramid of needs. There are 5 levels: physiological, safety, love and belonging, self-esteem, and then self-actualization. The most fundamental need is physical. The need to have basic survival, feed, clothe, and house yourself. Then there is the need to feel safe and secure, to have personal financial security and security of well-being. And the next 3 levels are to have love, friendship, intimacy, to have a sense of belonging within family. And the second top level is esteem, to feel valued and to be recognized. Finally, the top level is about self-actualization, which Maslow describes the need to be everything one possibly can be. So you may wonder where I'm going with this. Why have I gone from a potted history of Nikola Tesla to my experiences to a theory of human motivation? Well, when I chart the development of engineering and its place in society, isn't this how, thanks to the enormous advancements in technology, our engineering thinking and processes evolved? From being a straightforward application of foundational principles, from simply building a power station to generate electricity, putting down a road for cars to go on, to let's put some safety features on, add the amenities, street lighting, sidewalks, then on to let's now automate the power station to make life easier for operators. Let's now make the bridge a bit more attractive and have the aesthetics, to where we are today in a cyber world. How can we make the infrastructure even smarter? How can we enable the infrastructure with technology so that it can tell us how to operate it, how to maintain it, and so that it can be the most efficient facility, the most efficient power station, the most durable and safest bridge that it could be? Let's go back to the example of my own frustrated experience in solving the problem of tracking patients with dementia. If I could turn back the clock and use the technologies of today, I would now have at my disposal a myriad of devices and tracking technologies to play with. But that doesn't mean I can apply them indiscriminately. I would need to apply the technologies sensitively and with reference to what I'm actually doing, dealing with elderly, fragile patients who deserve the utmost respect. As an engineer, I would need to understand the needs of the elderly patients, the needs of their family, the needs of the doctors and nurses caring for these patients. It is not about simply slapping RFID tracking devices on their bodies or their clothes. This is where I'm finally heading tonight with my story. We are now engineers that can equip ourselves with technology and with data. But it is still data that still requires human intelligence to make sense of. Data that requires us engineers to use our foundational knowledge of the laws and principles to interpret, to turn them into rules and algorithms that can be processed by machines. Never more so do we need engineers and scientists to be the strategic thinkers and interpreters of electronic data. Never more so do we need engineers to play their part in society to help society navigate through a new world order, an Internet of Things. I read with a mixture of amusement and some dismay at the news that Queen Elizabeth doing her first tweet. Granted that somebody set it up for her and all she did was push the button. But here's an 88-year-old lady, and a monarch at that, giving the latest social media tool a go. But it was with dismay that I read that an internet troll got to her tweet. A new world order indeed. So here's my challenge to you. To outsmart artificial intelligence, so that the application of technologies is always underpinned by your foundational principles, a code of ethics and humanistic values, because never more so are we buffeted by data of such volume, variety and velocity that presents not only limitless opportunities but major risks as well. Consider the research being led by our Iowa State University in the US by a professor called In-Ho Cho. He's a professor of civil construction and environmental engineering who saw a future in earthquake engineering through virtual reality video games. Now, to the younger generation in this room, I'm not advocating that you spend your time video gaming. But for Professor In-Ho Cho, his creative imagination, that creative imagination that Tesla had, allowed him to link the strategies and moves he made while playing puzzle building games at high school, combining structural engineering and computational science. On the university website, Cho was quoted in saying, "While playing puzzle games, I videotaped my moves over and over again and discovered patterns in my strategy. There I learned of parallel algorithms." Cho is basing his research on the use of big data to reproduce structural nonlinearity and complex real-scale damage phenomena in reinforced concrete structures, and to develop a parallel computing engine that other researchers can use to detect microscopic structural damage in a virtual earthquake engineering laboratory, much sooner than what modern structure codes monitor. So the Internet of Things conversation is about an ecosystem of interconnected objects communicating with each other, underpinned by the cognitive science philosophy of sense, think, act. Sensors measuring and providing data, analytics to turn data into information, and computers and machines to act on the information. Engineers will always be part of that ecosystem, the human in the machine-to-machine loop, and the human in the object-to-computer loop. And in that cycle of sensing, thinking, and acting, we are still needed to use our foundational knowledge of engineering and science to write the rules for the thinking cycle. In writing the rules, you need to have a wider reference framework of what you're trying to achieve beyond simply designing or building a piece of infrastructure. Lord Jonathan Sacks, a British rabbi and a scholar of Judaism, once said, "Technology gives us the power, but it does not and cannot show us how to use the power." Engineers in a cyber world are the ones that can show us how to use the power. And the power of technology keeps increasing in quantum leaps and bounds. So far, all I've spoken about, I wrote last week, or thought about last week. This morning on the flight up here from Sydney, I picked up 2 articles in today's newspaper on new technological developments. A young Belgian engineer has developed an ambulance drone, a remote control drone that carries life-saving equipment and cameras to reach hard-to-get patients. The second article is on Google embarking on research on a cancer pill. A pill filled with magnetic particles that you can swallow, which will get into your bloodstream and which can send data to a sensor worn on the body. In the time frame of 1 week, I learned about 2 more life-changing developments. The pace of technology evolution challenges us, and if engineering were a living and breathing life form, we could say, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that engineering is now in a most actualized and enlightened state, and we engineers are pivotal in continuing to challenge and push technological frontiers, just as Professor Arlett taught us to do. We go back to those big words I used to describe the Internet of Things: pervasiveness, ubiquity. Engineers in the cyber world will also be pervasive and ubiquitous. In conclusion, I wish you all the best in dealing with a brave new world And to the students here today, and all the very best in your future careers. You are not only the future leaders of our society, but our bridge to the future for the moment. Go forth and transform your foundational engineering knowledge into wisdom for the continuing betterment of our society, enabled by your creative imagination and technologies that we can only dream about today to see things others can't. I hope you never be told you can't get there from here, because today you can. Thank you.